Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on Excel templates. If you are a small business owner looking to track paid time off or PTO for your employee, or you are an employee who wants to know your PTO balance yourself at any point of time, or HR professional looking for a simple software to track vacation balances for an employee, this video will be useful to you. In this video, I will demonstrate a PTO Calculator Excel template, which you can use to track vacation dates and calculate PTO balances automatically. You can download this free Excel template from Indzara.com. The link is on the screen and it'll also be provided in the description of the video. Thanks to everyone who used the first version of this template and gave very valuable feedback. I am glad to announce that I've been able to incorporate your requests in this version. This template is currently designed to track one employee's PTO balance in one workbook. If you would like to see a template that can handle multiple employees, please leave a comment with how many employees you have in your business to track. Now let's get started with the demo. So I have the template open now, and the template has three visible sheets. The home sheet is the first one, and here is where you will find the simple set of steps or instructions on how to use the template, and then some notes. And there is a link to the template support page, so please visit this page for more help around how to use the template with detailed screenshots and video demo and everything. So definitely visit the support page for any help. And then the employee PTO sheet is where we will spend most of the time. And so on the left is the input section, which is where we will provide inputs on our PTO policy for the employee, and then on the right, so these two areas are automatically calculated, which reflect the policy that we have entered as well as the balance calculation for that employee. So let's focus now on the left section, which is the inputs. So we begin by entering an employee name and then the date when the employee was hired, and then the PTO unit is how we award and manage the PTO balances. Is it in the number of hours or number of days? So we have the choice, and we can definitely change this if we need. Now, in terms of let's keep the PTO unit as hours for this demo, and the annual PTO accrual rate is the number of hours that the employee will receive in 1 year. So here I've put 120 hours, and the accrual period is how does this 120 hours, how will they be distributed to the employee throughout the year? Is it monthly? So this is the setting that I've chosen. We have 6 different options, and I'll go through the options just in a bit, but let's use monthly to demonstrate the concept here. And I've chosen 1, which means on the first of every month, we distribute the accrual of the PTO. And so if we look at the balance trend chart here, we will see that the employee will receive 10 at the beginning of the first month, and which is because he or she starts on the 1st January. So, on that day will be awarded 10, and then from then every first will receive 10 more, and then by the end in December of 2016 will reach 120 as the balance. So this is the reflection of the policy that we have set, and we can change this to say the employee should be accruing on the 15th of every month if that is your policy in your company, and then the chart will get updated accordingly to go from the 1st of the month to 15th of the month. The accrual will happen. And so now let me put it back to 1 so it's simple to follow. And now we have set the monthly first. And now what will happen here is the policy, the PTO policy for the employee will be shown here. It is very important that we review that. For example, the accrual rate ongoing is 10 hours per period, because we said 120 hours for the year. And so we have monthly, that is 12 accrual periods per year. So it is 10 hours per period. So this is where you want to check whether this is reflecting what you want to see. And the accrual hours will be the same for every period except the first one. So the first accrual window is a little bit tricky, because if the employee starts in the middle of an accrual period, then we need to prorate the PTO awarded in the first window. So I provide the first accrual window details. here the employee starts on the 1st. We give accrual on the 1st of every month. So 1st January to 31st is the first window for the employee, and he actually accrues on the 1st January because of one setting here, which is when does the accrual happen? Is it at the beginning of the period or end of the period? So here the beginning of the window is 1st Jan, end of the window is the end of the month. So if I say end, these things will change, and the window will change from the previous 2nd to this 1st, and you will get awarded on the 1st. So the window and the timing when you accrue in the window can be customized according to your needs. Now let's keep the simple example. 1st Jan to 31st Jan, first accrual date is 1st January, and then the first accrual amount is 10 hours. And this is because the employee starts on the same day as the accrual, so everything happens to be the same. But if the employee, let's say, starts on 15th, so then what happens is the employee is not employed for the first 14 days of the month, so will not get the PTO for that window, for that period of time. So the first accrual will actually happen to be only 5.484 hours. And this prorating will automatically happen in this template. And you will also see that the employee is eligible to accrue from 15th January, and the first accrual date is 15th January, even though the accrual window for your company is 1st Jan to 31st Jan. So I'm going to put it back to the 1st to keep it simple, and then we'll move on to the next set of options. So we saw monthly, so let me choose weekly, and then you will see some inputs change. So when we say weekly, you will see the balance trend now show every week you're getting accumulating the PTO, and this is 2.308 hours each week. So you end up finally at the same spot, but you actually distribute it every week 52, and so that is the number of hours each accrual period you get. When we choose weekly, you can choose the first accrual window's begin date. So you can customize it as 1st January is when you begin. So let's say, for example, the first window happens to be December 27th, 2015, which means you're saying my window begins on Sunday. So that is how you have set in your business how the accrual periods go. So that means the first window will be 27th December to 2nd January, and then the accrual happens on the 1st January because that is when the employee begins, and you will see that the amount is actually prorated automatically, just like we saw in the other setting. So it's very important that you can customize it, the first window, correctly to meet your business needs, and then things will flow smoothly from then on. Now, I want to go back to the 1st Jan option again to keep it simple. And when we choose weekly, we can set the first begin date. Similarly, if we choose every 2 weeks, you can do that. But when we say every 2 weeks, remember that the window will change and how often you actually accumulate will change. But you will still have to enter the start date. This is because some companies may give every other Friday, some companies may give every other Monday. So to allow to meet every business needs, I may have provided this option so you can customize the date. Okay, now the quarterly and the annual works very similar. The two options that are a little bit different are the monthly and the twice a month. So monthly, we already saw. One thing we didn't notice is you can also set the last day. So last day of every month will automatically happen. And let's say you get paid at the end of every month. So monthly, last day, end of the accrual period. So what happens now is the employee doesn't get anything at the beginning of the employment, but then after completing 1 month, on the last day of the month, that is basically January 31st, awarded 10 hours of PTO balance. And then end of next month, since February doesn't have 30 days or 31 days, the template can automatically figure that out and then give at the end of the month, and it can handle leap years. So if it's a leap year, you'll actually get it on the 29th. If it is not, then it'll be 28th. So those things are automatically calculated when you choose last day. Okay, so now the other setting, which is a little different, is twice a month. This is because some users have given feedback that in their company, they actually, give twice a month, for example, 1st and 15th of every month, or 15th and the last day of every month. So you can choose those settings, and then what happens is your accrual distribution changes accordingly. 1st and 15th of every month, you will actually accrue. So let me go back to the weekly setting. So we do this weekly, let's say. We talked about these options, and now the rollover policy. So one thing you'll notice is that this chart actually shows for 367 days at this point. And let me put it to be 400 days. So you will see that it is continuing to climb. And so most companies may have a rollover policy where you cannot roll over all your balance from one year into the next year. There may be some limits. So some companies may say you cannot carry over anything, that's zero rollover or no rollover. In that case, at the end of the year, it'll actually drop back to zero. And in companies, if you don't have any limits, obviously you can choose unlimited rollover and it'll keep climbing. And then if you have a rollover limit, you can enter the number of hours. So in this case, I've entered 40, so it'll drop to 40. So 40 hours is only the limit, and that is how much you can carry over from one year to the next. And so the template can figure that out as well. The other setting related to rollover is the rollover timing. So when will this rollover happen? Is it the calendar year or work anniversary? So if you choose work anniversary, the template will use the hire date of the employee, and every year, every anniversary, it'll apply the rollover. Because we have chosen here, 1st January, it actually doesn't make a big difference to the chart because the employee begins on the calendar first day. But if in your company an employee can start any date, then you can choose either the calendar year or the work anniversary for the rollover timing. Now, the probationary period. So some companies in some roles may actually award a PTO only after the employee has been employed at the company for a certain number of days or months. So you can enter that probationary period here. So let me, for example, enter 30 and let me, okay, so when we enter 30, we see a data validation. So I think it's a good time to explain the error checks built in. So one thing is you have said that for the first 30 days, the employee doesn't actually get any PTO, which means the eligible date for the employee gets pushed to 31st Jan because it starts on the first 30 days will not get any PTO. So we'll start becoming eligible to accrue from 31st Jan. But your window, you actually put it as 1st Jan, and that is why you see an error. So let's go and fix this. So let's say the employee begins, the accrual window begins on the Sunday, 31st January. So now what happens, the error goes away, and you can see in the balance chart for the first 30 days, the employee will not receive anything. And then the first eligible window here, 31st Jan to 6th February, because we have set the accrual to be at the end of the window is 6th February. So the first accrual date is 6th February, will accrue 2.308 hours. If we had said beginning, that means on 31st January, you will see the employee's accrual rate or accrual balance, the PTO balance reflect a positive number. So in a sense, you can control the probationary period during which the employee will not receive any PTO. But whenever you have that, it's very important to double check whether your accrual begin date is correctly entered. There will be a validation error, and so you can be alerted based on the error and go back and change the begin date. The maximum allowed PTO balance. So we've talked about the rollover policy, so we can set a limit on how much can be, the maximum that can be carried over from one year to the next. But even during the year, some companies may have a maximum allowed PTO balance. So at any point during the year, you cannot go beyond 250 or something. So you can enter that maximum allowed PTO balance. The template will then prevent the balance to be above that number. And so you can enter that. And, if you don't really have a maximum, allowed PTO balance, put a very, very high number here. But most companies may have a maximum, and so that's why this input is provided. Does the accrual rate vary by tenure? So this is important because in most companies, they award loyal employees with more PTO or more paid time off or more vacation days. So in such cases, you would choose yes, the accrual rate vary by tenure, and then come in and fill this table out. So this example here, I said for the first year, which means you have completed 0 years, so you have not completed any year. During the first year, it'll actually be 120 hours of PTO accrual per year, and the maximum PTO balance you can have is 250. But once you complete 1 year, your rates will be set differently. And then once you complete 3 years, you will go into a different tier. And you can enter more rows if your company has multi-tiered policy. But this should be the number of completed years. The first one should be 0 because every employee begins with 0 completed year tenure. So this is where you would begin. And then you can have more rows according to the tenure-based policy that you may have. So this is needed. If you enter this information as yes, then this table will be used for PTO calculation. And so keep that in mind. And if you said no, that means this table doesn't matter. So you can ignore this table. Now, the PTO policy, we've already gone through this. We've gone through the errors. The last part of this is about checking the PTO balance. This is currently set for today. So I have a formula here which says equals today. That means it will always show the current balance. But if you would prefer to enter a different date, you can definitely type that in. And the balance trend chart is controlled by the start date of the chart and how many days do you want to see in the chart. So if I want to see only for 1 year, I can type that in. If I want to see only for 6 months, I can type that in. And depending on how the window that you choose, you may want to come back and customize your axis to show the major points here as months. That's the default I've set, but you can definitely show in days or years depending on the scale in which you are using for your specific use case. So before we actually could see the balance, obviously you may have a reason to enter PTO date. So if your employee has already taken any PTO, or if it's scheduled to take any PTO or vacation, you would enter those dates here. So right now I have entered some dummy values here, 2nd June to 4th June. So you can enter a range of dates here. And this is a feature that was requested from the first version. And so 2nd June to 4th June, let me say I take 2 hours on each of those 3 days. So, and let me put it back to 365 days. So you will see that 3 days, 222. So totally 6 hours of PTO were taken in that window. And then you can, let me say, for example, I take 1 hour on 5th July, then that will be the yellow. So yeah, the yellow points reflect the use, and the yellow points usually will bring the PTO balance down. And so this is what is happening here. Keep in mind, even if the employee is taking only 1 day off, make sure you enter, for example, 5th July, enter the same date in both columns. We need both. And then you can enter the number of hours. The same number of hours will be applied for both dates. So for example, 2nd June to 4th June, if your employee is taking 5 hours on 2nd June, 4 hours on 3rd June, then make sure you enter them as separate rows. You would want to put a range only if the number of hours per day taken is exactly the same every day. And then you can ignore this PTO hours column if you choose days as your PTO unit. Okay, so this is how you can enter PTO dates. Keep entering new rows of data. Watch my other video about how to enter or delete rows in Excel tables. To if you're new to Excel tables, you can enter more rows and it'll automatically get added here to the calculation of PTO balance. Now the last piece of the template is the adjustments. So we have an option to add or subtract PTO balances if you have the need to do some ad hoc changes. For example, if you actually have an employee who has been with the company for 5 years and you've been using some other system, manual system to track balances, and now you want to move over to this template, then what you can do is to enter the employee details here correctly, the hire date and everything correctly. But then you don't want to enter all the PTO dates. Maybe you don't have all of those PTO dates available. So in such cases, you can come in here, enter, for example, the employee, had already, has a balance which you know from your manual system. Just enter a negative amount here to account for all the vacation that has already been taken by the employee, and then make sure that the current balance that is shown right now reflects your calculation from your previous manual system or tool that you may have had. So once you do the one-time sync using adjustment entered here, then you can continue to use the template and enter new PTO dates in the future, and you're good to go. You can also add a positive amount here, and that will, for example, if I enter 50 here, you will see that on that day I get added 50 more hours of PTO. Again, if it happens that you need to make such adjustments, you can do it. Just enter the date and the amount. I just put 0 just as a dummy row for you to know how the adjustments can be done. Okay, now this is what the template does. Just to recap, this is a very simple PTO balance calculator and vacation tracker, which you can use for one employee at a time. If you want to use for multiple employees, you have to make a copy of the entire workbook. You cannot use the same workbook and make a copy of a sheet to make that work. That will not work. So make sure that you use the template for one employee and calculate your PTO balances automatically with all the different settings available to customize your template exactly to your business needs. If you like the template, please share with your friends, and also subscribe to the channel. And if you have any feedback about how to improve this template or any suggestions, please leave them in the comments. I look forward to your comments. Thank you very much for watching this video.